From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hello, everyone. It's great to have you here on the Badass Counseling Show. Whether you are tuning in from Albuquerque or Alberta or Albania or someplace really, really far else that starts with an A, it's really great to have you here. I'm Sven Erlandson, the host of this fine thing that we're doing here. I am joined in studio by Rob the Rocket. Hello, Rob.
Hey, my friend, how are you today? I've got the Badass Counseling hat on. Thank you for gifting me that. I appreciate that. It's all about the swag. I've said that all my life in business.
You're going with the trucker cap. I got my stocking cap on, and it's the Badass Counseling Show stocking cap. A little chilly on my bald head here.
I'll switch off next week. Rotation.
Okay. And we are also joined by Casey, not in the booth. Casey down here in the filming room. Young Casey, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
Lovely. What's new and groovy in your life?
Not much.
Wow, you're a bundle of excitement, Casey. Wow.
Isn't that how I usually am?
You usually are. Well, speaking of Casey, tonight we are doing something we have never done before, ever. On the show. And this is now you're discovering tonight what Casey brings to the show. That so much of the creativity and the ideas and the movements of the show are inspired by her directly out of that big brain of hers. And tonight we actually have a husband and a wife. We've never done this before. We have them in the same show. Now we're not taking them. We actually have them in two shows. We're taking the husband first for half the show. Then we're taking the wife. And then in the follow-up episode, so this is a two-part show or two-episode session, I guess. And in the follow-up one, then I will have them together. All right? And it's a hell of a story. So buckle up, folks. Here we go. Rob, what do we got?
Marshall wrote into us and said, "Hi, I'm Marshall. I'm 47 and I'm in the Army. Parents divorced at age 8. Mom cheated. She was a workaholic and I barely saw her. Dad moved away and started a new family. Saw him twice over the next 30 years. Mom remarried immediately. Stepdad was verbally and physically abusive. Grandpa on dad's side was my main father figure. A genius of physics and calculus. World War II veteran with a trust no one mindset. Always brought that up. And I'm the only grandchild, the golden child, first grandchild on mom's side, and I was pushed from birth to be a doctor. So I'm not a doctor. No good at physics or calculus, not good enough. Trust no one, fear of abandonment. Parents didn't teach me shit, especially from an emotional perspective. Suck it up and move forward. Roll that over into my marriage of 25 years with 8 kids together. My wife was verbally abused by her mom really bad. Her mom recently died. Our marriage has been a shit show with multiple infidelities on each side. There's a lot of shit going on here. For the last 5 months, I've been really hammering myself through individual counseling and courses and books, and I'm in a pretty decent place right now. But I'd love to be on the podcast and have a conversation with you. I feel, with many E's, I feel everything you say. I can also have my wife on here with me if you'd like. Through all this awareness, understanding, and flushing out all the bad shit, I feel like trust is my biggest issue remaining."
Marshall, great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, Sven.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's go ahead and get to work. So this was quite a show you came from. Mom cheated. Dad moves away, see him twice in the next 30 years. Stepdad was verbally and physically abusive, and Grandpa was this guy who was sort of larger than life and always brought up, trust no one. And here you are trusting no one in your life. As you see it from your childhood, which of all the characters in your childhood sort of stuck out or was the most dominant figure? And dominance can happen even in absence. Who was the most dominant person or the one that sort of impacted you most?
It was absolutely my grandfather. Because like I said, the mom was the workaholic. She wasn't really around too much. Stepdad definitely wasn't someone I wanted to be around. So the grandfather with all of his, accolades because after the World War II, he went on to be an electrical engineer. And he did all these things with the missile systems so he knew everything.
Yeah, he knew everything, and it sounds like, in the way you say it, well, let me ask you, was he one of those guys that loved to know everything and make sure everyone knew he knew everything, or was it not quite like that?
No, absolutely. He would brag about himself constantly to everyone. Same stories over and over again.
Got it.
I heard him the most. I was over there the most.
And so let me ask you, what was your opinion of your grandfather growing up?
Oh, he's like the hero.
And he implanted this message, trust no one, and he always brought it up. Did he ever say why trust no one?
That was ingrained in him because he was this Cold War, making air defense missiles type guy. So
okay, all right.
I was always with him, but he would even be like, "Don't trust your wife and everything."
Oh, but did he ever give a reason why not trust anyone, including your wife? Did he ever give a reason?
I guess because someone will be out to get you.
Someone's out to get you.
Get what you have.
So you said you've been going through a lot of therapy, really hammering yourself through individual counseling and courses and books. So what's missing?
The ability to allow myself to trust someone, like fully feel it. So in turn, no one can trust me.
And that makes sense. If I trust no one, then you feel they can't trust you. Let me ask you, in one sentence or less, what is the primary fear driving the behavior that causes you to trust no one? What ultimately is your fear? Apart from what Grandpa said, I want to know in your words, what is your fear?
To end up like my dad, basically, and get cheated on, abandon all your kids. Well, I was the only child, but abandon your kids and just never see them again, and then die alone.
Okay. And end up like dad. And what is the one thing of your dad that you most don't want to end up like? Is it dying alone, or is it how you viewed him, or what was the most reprehensible thing about your dad that you don't want to end up like?
Abandoning everyone.
Abandoning everyone. Okay.
That's what I feel.
Okay. And so just so I'm clear then, I am terrified to trust, mainly because... and to allow yourself to trust, because I don't want to end up like dad. Most specifically, I don't want to end up abandoning everyone.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm hearing you, then you believe there is a causation, that if I trust, I'm going to end up abandoning everyone.
Absolutely. Just ingrained in from birth, basically.
To an outsider, I don't see the link between if I trust, even if I get hurt, how does that lead to me abandoning everyone?
Because I would feel betrayed.
Okay.
And then I would
want to run away.
Yes, sir.
I see. And so let me ask you this. Which for you personally is worse? Is it getting hurt, getting betrayed, which you admit you already have been betrayed because both you and your wife have already cheated on each other? Right? You said there's infidelities on both sides. So it's already happened, right? And just out of curiosity, did you abandon everyone then?
No, sir.
Okay.
In the moment of me cheating, yes.
True. But in the situation with your dad, you were talking about how he was cheated on. He was cheated on, and he was so heartbroken, presumably, that he ran away and abandoned everyone. And so you fear that if you trust. So let me ask you this. Your wife cheated on you, but you weren't fully trusting her at the time. Okay. So maybe you hadn't fully opened your heart. So maybe the loss wasn't as great. But if I totally open up and totally trust, and then she cheats on me, that would be a fate worse than death. And I would want to run away to the hills and hide and abandon everyone. Do I have it right?
That's pretty accurate.
Okay, fair enough. And is this a scenario that you can actually feel, like in your bones? Like, yes, this is genuinely what I'm most afraid of in trusting my wife, that she will hurt me so badly and that I won't be able to take it and I'll run away. Can you actually feel that?
Yes.
Okay, that's fair.
I was going to say, I just feel like it's like a self-sabotage, like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something like this in me.
Because it's been written on you by your father?
Right. It's like it's in my story.
Well, and that's really a testament to the power of parental imprinting, that this thing that this other person did, because I am related to them, sort of like I am fated, like it's inevitable. I will do the same thing. Or at the very least, I'm afraid I will do the same thing because he did it first. Isn't it fascinating that an otherwise free will actor or person can fear losing their free will, that it would just happen? And that makes total sense. And that's really a powerful message for other people listening to see how powerful that is. And this is not the first time we've seen it on the show and so forth. Let me ask you this, though. Which is scarier for you? The idea of after you open your heart fully and trust your wife, that she then cheats on you and just crushes you. And is this the feeling of being crushed for trusting her and her cheating on you? Is that the scarier thing? Or is the scarier thing me running away, abandoning everyone, and being just like Dad? Which is scarier for you?
I think getting crushed by her would be the scariest. I mean, just based on the sequence of events there.
Well, and you never know, because I had asked you what's keeping you from it. And you said, I don't want to basically end up like Dad. And so the ending up like Dad then really isn't the ultimate or worst part about it. The ending up like Dad in the abandoning everyone, that's the aftermath of this really heinous, horrible thing happening to you, right?
Right.
The one thing I'm wondering, though, is this. How do you know that it's the same? More specifically, how do you know that your dad trusted your mom? You said he ran away when you were young. You've only had, okay, you don't know that. So technically, we are talking about two different sequences, potentially two different sequences of events. It could very well be that he never opened up and trusted her. She cheated on him, just like your wife has cheated on you, but he ran away. Is it possible that you've already broken the cycle?
I have considered, since my grandpa was, his dad, that he wasn't feeding him with the same trust no one shit. So I put myself in his position, and I do sense that, that was probably the case with him as well.
That was probably the case, which means you have already broken the generational curse. You have already severed that blood tie to his fate, because he didn't trust and ran. You didn't trust, got cheated on, and stayed. So you've already broken the cycle. So technically, and we technically don't know if Dad did trust or didn't trust, but given the circumstances and him getting the exact same message of don't trust anyone from Grandpa that you got, it's quite likely he didn't trust.
Right.
It's not guaranteed, but it's quite likely, which means you've already broken the cycle. Congratulations.
Thank you. My kids will thank me for that.
Yeah.
All 8 of them.
Yeah, all 8 of them. That's a whole lot of thanks.
Right.
Thanksgiving is a happy day at your house, except whoever has to pay for all that fucking food.
That's me pretty much.
Yeah, I figured that. All right.
That's fine.
So then let me ask you, what in the sort of everyday, in the here and now, in the everyday, trust is a big word and so on and so forth, but what specifically are we talking about that you feel you have been incapable of doing in your relationship with your wife?
Letting her in to my little world.
And what,
basically.
and we can, letting her into my little world. And I know what you mean. And I think everyone knows what you mean on one hand, but when it comes to nuts and bolts, what really are we talking about? What does that mean?
That's me actually telling her what my fears are. Also, I had no idea what I was doing before this latest event, and I stumbled upon good people to help me find this stuff out.
Which latest event are we talking about?
I just had no idea that I was living in fear because of all this childhood trauma or these childhood imprints that were made on me.
Right.
As you say it.
Right. And so let me ask you, telling her what my fears are, and what precisely are your fears? Are you talking about the ones we've already spoken, or are there some others that you haven't shared with her?
I have shared with them, her with them now, in this moment.
Wait, prior to our conversation today, you have shared these with her.
Yes.
So then, haven't you technically already let her into your little world, or is there still something or some things that you aren't sharing, some segment of your life you aren't sharing?
That's what I was hoping you would help me with, like to be able to find the last piece of this puzzle so I could fully trust her. I think you kind of already have by telling me that I've broken the multi-generational, setup here, but I still feel like I'm not ready for that.
And what, in all of your actions, what are you not ready to do? I'm still not understanding where the hitch is in the relationship with her. Because you said, letting her into my own little world. I said, what does that mean? You said, tell her what my fears are. I said, have you told her what your fears are? You said, yes, I have. So then what are we really talking about? What is it you're afraid to fucking tell her? Or what is it you're afraid to do? Or what either words or actions are we talking about? Just so I understand, Marshall.
I guess just me allowing myself to trust her.
Is it trusting her words, trusting her actions, or is it trusting her to open up with some words or actions of my own?
It's like me being able to trust myself enough to trust her, kind of, if that makes sense.
And what is it about her that you trust least?
Just that she'll cheat on me again, or she'll just leave me because she's sick of this shit,
Cheat or leave. Okay. And just out of curiosity, who cheated first?
Me.
Okay.
I set the tone in this marriage.
Okay.
I take full responsibility for that.
You cheated. And then how much later did she cheat?
5 years.
Okay. And how did it feel? Did you discover it or did she admit it?
She admitted it.
And in your case with your cheat, did you admit it or did she discover it?
She discovered him.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, did you fess up to all of it or just enough to get away with it?
I've now fessed up to all of them. There was a couple that I kept hidden and I told her them.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you have eventually fessed up to all of it.
Yes.
Okay. And she has revealed it. And how did it feel when you discovered that she had cheated on you, when she told you this?
Like betrayed. Seriously betrayed.
And so she's done it more than once?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. And so when you say you're afraid to trust her again, does that mean you're afraid? I'm trying to understand what exactly that means in terms of actions. Is it that you're afraid to just stay in the relationship?
I'm not afraid to stay in the relationship, but I want a relationship where there can be trust in it.
Oh, of course. I mean, love it. But I'm wondering, what does that trust translate into in terms of action? Or is it that I want a feeling of trust?
I want the feeling.
Okay, I want the feeling of it, right. One of the things that happens when trust is betrayed is the simple fact of the matter is that trust takes a long time to rebuild and to feel at peace with the person, to feel comfortable again. And it just takes repetitions. It just takes repetitions and repetitions and repetitions.
Man, I have taken some actions, I guess you could say, just to take things out of my life. I cut out I ran a whole ballpark and I cut that out just to get rid of a whole bunch of people and noise so I could be in solidarity and actually work on myself.
You cut out a whole ballpark? What does that mean?
I was running the whole ballpark. It's a community of kids. I was the president of it.
I see. So I'm not running the ballpark anymore. What other changes have you made?
Immersing myself in the solidarity of learning about myself. In that, I've established the values and the boundaries and what I want in the relationship and all that stuff, my needs. I've established all those things, and I'm pretty much just living a life of stoicism, like self-discipline and integrity. I'm just working on living that life. I'm not trying, I'm living it. So
And let me ask you,
and I hope that builds some trust within her just by being around me in my presence.
Let me ask you, how much does that suit of armor of stoicism, integrity, and self-discipline, how much does that chafe?
It hurts a little bit.
Okay. And what's the hardest part about living this way?
I guess just not being able to, just breaking away from your old bad behaviors and patterns.
And what's bad about running a ballpark? I'm just trying to understand.
There's bad people there that suck the life out of you.
Little children playing baseball. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, no, it's the parents. It's the parents.
Gotcha.
It's the neediness. It's the neediness of everyone. It's just, It was constant, nonstop.
And so what are you doing with your time more? Are you spending more time with your own family or what's going on?
Yes, sir. That and working on myself, reading lots of books, your book.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to be the man for my wife that she's always wanted.
Fair enough. Is the man for your wife that she's always wanted, is that the man, if you were to be totally honest, that you actually want? What do you want?
Yes. Yes, that is what I want.
Is it? Why?
Through this journey of self-discovery, I've just determined that she's the one for me.
Why, above all else, is she the one for you?
Just because of, we met like I rescued her from another boyfriend, that was, being all tough with her and stuff. And it's just meant to be. Our birthdays are 2 days apart. And like when I look at her, I just see all the beauty inside, and it like radiates out, and I know she's hurting. So I want to rescue her again, but I know I can't save her, but I want to be there for her. Through this process.
Do I sense that you're tearing up a little bit there?
A little bit.
Okay. And what is it about saying those things that makes you feel a little bit sad or tear up a little bit? Nothing wrong with the tears, nothing at all. But what is it about that makes you feel a little bit sad or tears you up?
I know that she's the one for me, and I love her, and I want to fight for this thing, and it's been rough, man, and I'm just not going to give up on this.
And what would you say, how close is she to leaving the relationship?
Well, it was a lot worse 5 months ago. We were still living in the same house together. We've had some pretty deep conversations. I realized that I was just listening to her words and I was feeling attacked. So I would just shut down, run away from her, go find, another girl.
What was the single biggest message you got in your childhood, not about life, like trust no one, but about yourself? Whether it was explicit or implicit, what was the biggest message you got about Marshall?
Oh, I don't matter.
And how was that message conveyed?
I played sports like all 4 years in high school, and I played football in college, and she went to one basketball game once. And if like there was homecoming or something, like a parent from the stands would have to be there to represent me, how the mom and kid come out on the court or whatever. Yeah, that shit. And she was never there. She worked 16 hours a day times 13 days in a row and took one Sunday off. So I never saw her.
And right, so you definitely didn't matter. And of
I
course,
didn't have a dad.
Right. You didn't matter enough to him to stick around. And so what has been the single biggest thing that you have done in your life to compensate for being taught that you don't matter?
I've just never stopped doing things like the running you're talking about.
Yeah.
It came in every form almost that you listed.
So in the book, so that people know, in the book, there's a hole in my love cup in chapter 3 or whatever. I talk about your running. That all this shit that you're engaged in is you running from that tidal wave of all the feelings, the pain, the misery, the messages that you got as a child. And so you've run from that by staying busy, by being active, right? Which actually looks like it's functional, like you fit right into society. Hey, look at him, he's a go-getter. But really it was you running from all this shit inside of you. If I stay busy outside of me, I won't have to sit still with all this shit inside of me. Is that what you're saying?
Right, like we just keep having kids. We just keep staying busy and just keep going.
Well, yeah, and chaos is a great fucking drug, man. The chaos of 8 kids, plus if you add a few pets in, plus crazy life, plus a ballpark and everybody else's kids and parents. Oh, fuck yeah. And what happens in that case then is you begin to craft your identity around this notion that my doing is my identity. Doing is me. That's where I get my worth. So then the notion of not doing is anathema. It's like, no, I can't fucking do that. The notion that I am loved simply for being is a foreign concept, right? I have to do in order to have worth. Would that be somewhat accurate in your case or not really?
That would be accurate. And the self-love is like...
And what's the hardest thing for you to love about yourself?
Just the guilt of everything that I've done. And it's a trickle-down effect to all the kids, too, and everyone around me.
Okay, but that implies that you didn't dislike yourself before you cheated on your wife. Did you dislike yourself before this relationship or ever even fucking started?
I had no feeling that I disliked myself.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. And then, so let me ask you this. In terms of this notion of I'm a bad person and I don't matter, what percent of you still believes I don't matter?
20%.
20%. And what percent of you still believes I'm bad because of the things you've done and so forth? I'm a bad person.
Same number, 20%.
20%. All right. What's the biggest thing that needs to happen as you see it in order for you to finally matter and to see yourself as good?
I just continue my self-discovery journey and just keep working on myself constantly until more and more things are discovered and sort of put to bed.
Yeah, the biggest thing that's going to make the biggest difference is not the putting in, it's the taking out. And it's identifying yet still where that message of I don't matter and going into where you got those messages, dad's absence, mom's absence from anything significant and so forth. And going into those stories, pulling up and flushing out all of the feelings that go along with those stories. Because the good will naturally run into your life, and you'll pursue those things that make you happy. But very often the hardest part is getting out those negative messages. I actually want to turn to KC because I think she has a question or two for you.
I didn't really have a question, but I just, from listening to the both of you talking, I feel like the person that you don't trust the most is you. Well, it's like he keeps talking about all these things that he's closing off in order for his wife to trust him, but I think it's him that doesn't trust him. So maybe, Marshall, you think that if you close your world up to certain people, that you won't be tempted to do certain things and those other people won't be creating trouble for you. I could be totally off on this, but I feel like the one thing your grandfather really did a good job with, or your father did a good job with, was making you not trust you.
That was the grandfather.
Grandfather.
And let me ask you this, if you're to be totally honest, what percent is this new life of stoicism and whatever you want to call it, what percent is that actually authentically who you are?
I would say somewhere in the 75% range. It's just so much simpler to live like this. Like I have my own rules and I've been doing this for like a couple months. So
that's a good start. Congratulations. That's excellent. And what's you said it's 75% authentically. What is the 25% that's missing?
I'm not sure about that.
And that'll
I'm
be
not sure what that could be.
And that will be something you'll need to explore in your own self-work moving forward. Marshall, unless you have any other questions or thoughts for us, please feel free to express them now. Otherwise, we're going to take a commercial break and welcome your wife onto the show and sort of say goodbye for you for now till the next episode. Any final questions or thoughts, Marshall?
Sounds good. Just thanks for having me on, and I guess we'll see you in an hour or so.
We will see you later. Yes, sir. Thanks so much for being on the show, Marshall.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right.
I've been doing some real healing work in my life, and I mean hardcore. But I've been craving something new to level up. A friend of mine told me about this badass counselor. I gotta admit, I rolled my eyes. Then I watched a few of his videos, and yes, this is the guy. I went and got his audiobook, Badass Wisdom. Holy shit. Absolute ass-kicking, inspiring, deep, powerful shit, period. If you don't get this book, you're making a huge mistake. So do you got the guts to go big with your self-care? Go to badasscounseling.com, get the book Badass Wisdom now.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
And we are back. That was very interesting regarding Marshall. And now we've got Marshall's wife, Adina. And I want to welcome you to the show, Adina. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is completely ours. Adina, normally we would read the paragraph from any guest that we have on the show. However, we did not get a paragraph from you, which was our failing. So I want to ask you to just give us a little background on you and your life and also on your relationship.
Sure. I'm 46. I've been married for 25 years. I have 8 children that range in age from 4 to 24. I am a registered nurse and a master's prepared RN with a master's degree in nursing administration. I grew up in a small town. My parents were divorced when I was a teenager. My mom recently passed away in April. She and I had a very abusive relationship. I'm very close to my father. And I am really struggling to figure out where I belong and if I still belong in my marriage.
Well, that's actually just a perfect little synopsis. And then that just sort of begs the obvious question. What is the single biggest thing that causes you to think you may not belong in your marriage?
I struggle with the infidelity, both his and mine.
What part of your infidelity do you struggle with?
Guilt.
Guilt over what specifically? I mean, he had already cheated on you, so what are you guilty of?
I guess my upbringing, strong Christian background, don't get divorced. We really don't believe in that. Of course, adultery is, one of the forbidden things that you do in marriage, of course. I think that it's twofold for me. Upbringing, and then just that I caused him harm.
And so you feel bad, presumably, over causing him harm.
I do. I feel like I was warranted to seek out comfort, but not in the way that I did.
Fair. What weighs on your heart the most, or what is the biggest sort of guilt or just negative feeling? Is it that I committed adultery? Is it that I hurt my husband? Or is it something else? What do you feel like I'm a bad person for most?
I feel like society, our surroundings make it difficult to not conform to having that great, perfect marriage where no one hurts anyone else and there's no infidelity and, the thing that you dream of, and now it's gone on both sides.
And so society, what were you saying about society? Society, what? Because you were sort of saying society makes it harder, but in what way?
It does. Again, it goes back to religious upbringing. We have a strong Christian influence that surrounds us. His uncle, in particular, is a pastor of a non-denominational church. So we have that very strong influence. My father and grandmother both raised me Christian, and they just feel like we should do everything it takes to fix this and to move forward for particularly the children's sake, which I also struggle with because I don't want to hurt my children.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't. Is it safe to say that they are, to the degree that they've been exposed to whatever amount of this, that they are hurting already over this and over you two's relationship?
Yes, that's a very fair statement.
Fair enough. Appreciate your honesty. And just out of curiosity, in that Christian upbringing you refer to, and everybody's who was raised Christian was raised differently. The upbringings are different values, etc. For you personally, which is the bigger crime? Which makes you more of a bad person? The adultery or divorce?
Adultery.
Oh, okay. How many people actually know that you committed adultery and that he committed adultery?
That is one of the main problems at the moment. He involved my daughter, told her specifics about my recent relationship. She's 22 and my best friend. And he let her be present during a phone call. He put himself on speaker so that she could hear the conversation.
Ugh.
And of all of his infidelity, I have never shared details with my children other than they were present when I found out about one of them. So the older two overheard some of that occur, but I have never confirmed or spoken with or shared any of those details because I feel like that's not something that my children need to know or hear or shoulder.
Right.
I felt betrayed more so than him ever being with any other woman, that he would damage my child's relationship with me. And when I have protected him, I feel very betrayed. I could have exposed him many, many times. Several of his affairs were with married women, with military women in positions of power. I could have destroyed him not only publicly, but professionally and personally. And I chose to not do that because I didn't see the worth in it. I felt it was between he and I, and it didn't need to get back to our children. It didn't need to get back to our families. So I kept quiet. And he also went to a very dear friend of mine in this recent time frame and divulged all of the happenings of me to her. And it happened to be my daughter's softball coach and wife that we see 3 times a week all the time.
As you view it, do you think he did this maliciously to deliberately make you look bad to your daughter and to these people?
At the time, I very much felt like that, yes.
At the time, you very much felt like that, which implies you don't very much feel like that now. And if that's true, why?
I do feel like there was malice behind it. I don't think he understood the implications of what he was doing and the downfall of what was going to occur from that point forward, because we all know that women in particular love to talk about one another and not be very supportive.
Regarding your daughter, which is worse, though, your daughter knowing or everyone knowing?
My daughter.
Right, of course. And prior to him doing that, he technically already was exposed to your kids, even though you said it was accidental. He was already exposed. His infidelity.
Yeah, it was my 2 older kids.
Your 2 older kids. And that was, are you saying, and that was by accident on your part, or that was deliberate on your part?
It was an accident. We were on vacation and I picked up his phone and there was an I love you message from a 19-year-old soldier that he had been having a relationship with. And I confronted him about it. And all the other children were sleeping except my teenage daughter at the time. And she overheard some, but not all, of the conversation that occurred that night. So she knew something was going on. I don't know to what extent.
Oh, I thought you said your 2 oldest sons heard.
My daughter and my son both now know, because my daughter mentioned it to my son and asked if he knew. He wasn't present during that trip.
Got it.
But when she asked if he knew what was going on, he came to me and asked me if everything was okay.
Got it.
I told him that we were having issues and that there had been some things happen, and he asked if it were true. And I said, I will confirm that there are things happening, but that's all you need to know. If you are contacted by anyone, you need to deny. You need to just not speak with them.
Okay. So let me ask.
Direct them to me.
Okay. And on top of that, a lot of people know then in the community, and so your level of shame, of course, is significant. Humiliation. And so let me ask you, if you were to be totally honest, and this sort of goes against your good Christian values because y'all don't use this word, but let's be honest. And maybe it doesn't apply. And if so, tell me to go fuck myself. I won't be offended. But him letting your daughter be on speakerphone and then telling the friend, soccer coach, or softball coach, etc., if you were to be totally honest, what % do you hate your husband right now?
Oh, man. On a scale of 0 to 100, over this issue, like 90%.
90% hate your husband.
I can't believe that he would purposefully destroy a relationship between a mother and her daughter.
Yeah, no, I agree. And any parent doing that to another parent, where it's unwarranted. I mean, if you were some like abusive whatever to your kids, that's a different story, right? But you're not. That's not at stake here. This is between the 2 adults, and he looped the kids in. Your hate towards your husband is completely understandable. I don't know of anyone in that situation who wouldn't feel that. It's a very normal response to an abnormal set of circumstances. I'm really curious, though, about this other thing. we were talking about this idea of where do I belong and do I belong in this marriage anymore? And then you sort of do this riff on, the uncle and the family, your family, and so on and so forth. And Christian, Jesus, 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 stay in it. You must do this. You must do that. You must do this. You must do that. If you did not have them, everybody happy to give their fucking advice to the fucking damsel in distress who needs to be told what to do, because even though she's got a fucking master's degree and a successful career and has raised 8 motherfucking kids, she's dumb as shit and she needs to be told because we're the men folk and whatever the hell else. And we got the club of religion. We're going to beat the hell out of you with it. If all that weren't present, what would you do?
I would probably divorce him and try to find a new life.
And just so I'm clear, the reason that you would divorce him and find a new life is because, in one sentence or less, why?
Children, family, and friend pressure, obligation. And if I'm to be perfectly honest, I don't know how to live with him, but I don't know how to live without him.
I agree. You don't know how to live without him. You have plenty of experience of living with him. It to a large degree sucks. It sounds like it's hurtful and whatever else. And especially this piece of, looping other people in, that's like, wow. So you have no experience living without him. Let me ask you this. If you were just sort of taking the emotion out of it and the fear out of it and so on and so forth, what % do you think you could figure it out? What % confidence do you have that, I've never done it and so on and so forth, but I could figure it out. I'll do it. I'll figure it out. Or what % confidence do you or feel they have is, I couldn't do this. I know I just couldn't do this. What % confidence do you have that you could do this and figure it out as you go?
Financially speaking, it would be difficult.
Well, financially, what? I mean, whoever, if you're still raising the kids, if they're still resident to you, working and then him having to pay. I mean, regardless of what state you live in, somebody's paying fucking child support.
Oh, we could get into some really interesting things right here, Sven.
Well, okay, then I'll trust that your state and your situation infinitely better than mine. So financially it would be tough, but okay, fair. But let me ask you this. What %, give me a % confidence that you could figure the whole thing out as you go? Be honest.
25%.
25%. That's fair. And let me ask you this. What % confidence do you have that you actually want to be in this marriage anymore?
25%.
Yeah. In this, what keeps you in it? I'd ask you the question, if you didn't have the family and the uncle and the friends and everybody breathing fucking down your throat, would you do it? And you said, yeah, I'd divorce and find a new life. Okay, scary as it might be or whatever, that's what I would do. Is it safe to say that you would do that because that's what feels right to you?
Yes.
Right, which implies that the reason you're staying is not because it feels right to you, but because basically you're being told to.
The only person that's told me not to stay is my counselor.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, let me ask you this. Divorce hurts children. I don't think that's any grand fucking revelation. But do you believe that children can recover from divorce and go on to live fully functional and happy lives?
I think it's possible, but I think the co-parenting has to be exceptional.
Okay, fair enough. For the first 10 years of my children's life post-separation and divorce, they saw both parents and so forth, but to say we got along would be a gross overstatement. And I can't speak for their mother, but when they then moved into their late teens and 20s, I had to atone for a lot of shit. Whether or not, what conversations they've had with their mother, I have no idea. Their mother and I get along now fine. It's been 30 years since then. But my kids are happy, healthy, successful, tax-paying adults, married, relationships, and I have a good relationship with them, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe it's absolutely possible. But I love what you say. If it's two committed parents, doing well by their kids, et cetera, that they can recover and do well. Let me ask you this. If you were to get a divorce, and I'm not pushing one way or the other, what I'm pushing for is you got to fucking be you. At some point in your life, you got to be you. That's what it means to live authentically, okay? Let me ask you this. If you were to be totally honest, now you talk about hard questions, especially down where you all live. If you were to be totally honest, and given who your family is, et cetera, and there's no right or wrong answer, all right? Anything. This is a free-for-all fuck fest here on this show. Let me ask you, so to speak. Let me ask you, yes or no, do you believe in God?
I did. I'm not sure now.
All right. And the fundamental reason that you're not sure now is what?
I had an experience where I stood in the shower every day, which sounds silly, but it's my only quiet time with 8 children.
I'll bet.
And that was my prayer time.
Okay.
And I would pray every day for my marriage and to love me, just me. And I prayed it for such a long time. And I got in the car one time after I had found out about the little 19-year-old girl, and I drove to see him at a base. And I was so excited because he acted like he wanted to see me. And I drove there, and on the way there was a pastor on the Instagram feed, and I listened to him all the way there. And I was just so thankful. He was preaching about faith and forgiveness and freedom. And I went with such pure intentions to see him. And when I got there, we went to dinner, and then we went bowling. And while we were bowling, his phone rang.
Oh, no.
It was a FaceTime call from a married woman that he had been seeing since the 19-year-old. And when I saw her name come across the phone, I handed it to him, and my words were, "Your girlfriend's calling." It just came out of my mouth. And he said, no, that's, it's just somebody from class. Don't worry about it. Later that night, I was contacted by her husband, who said that he had spoken with my husband on multiple occasions, asking him to stop contacting his wife, and he wouldn't stop. And that I needed to know that they had been intimate because he had read their correspondence and he knew, and that I needed to know. And in that moment, I lost all faith in anything good. I had prayed for so long, and I felt like it wasn't answered. But recently someone said, it was answered. You just didn't hear it.
What didn't you hear?
It's like the man in the sea who's drowning, and a boat comes along and he says, no, thank you.
Right.
God will
Then
save
a
me.
helicopter, then a submarine, then an aircraft carrier, and no,
God
God's going
did answer me, but I didn't listen.
But what was the answer? According to this person with this clever fucking answer, what was God's answer?
That you're married to a serial cheater and you need to get out. That's your answer.
Okay. And so as a result, to use your quote, your words, I lost all faith in anything good. And that's understandable. It's totally understandable. That's a pretty good fucking reason, getting hammered and hammered and hammered. And you talk about driving out to that base, and I'm just envisioning a little girl just so wanting to be loved. And I'm not saying you're a fucking grown-ass successful woman, but just that spirit of a little girl just so wanting to be loved. And you're driving out there.
I was so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you get out there and you get fucking crushed again. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so just so I'm clear, and I'm not being facetious, I'm not trying to be a dick, it's an honest question. So you lost faith in anything good. In other words, that good things, or to believe in anything, good things might happen. But just so I'm clear, did you actually stop believing that there is a God?
For a short period of time, yes.
And it's okay.
I did.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with
I just
that.
felt like, what kind of God would allow a woman to suffer in that way repeatedly when you're praying for answers and for help? How can that even be a real thing?
That is right. And plenty of people and plenty of nations and cultures have wondered that's known as theodicy, the notion of how can God allow suffering to exist and evil to exist and so forth. Very hard question, which we won't go into now, but that makes total sense. And that is a natural response. But what you're saying is that God exists. And so the question then becomes, as we know from Scripture, the question then becomes when Jesus turns to his followers and says, yes, but what do you believe? I don't give a fuck what everybody else says, Peter or Paul. I want to know what you motherfucking believe. Not that Jesus would have ever spoken to Paul, because technically, whatever, separate issue.
Right.
Point is this: regarding divorce, I couldn't give two fucks what your uncle believes because he ain't on my fucking show. If he wants to come on my show, I'd be happy to talk with him if he has some problem that needs solving. I just want to know what you believe.
I don't believe God expects you to live this way in marriage. I believe it's a covenant and it's been broken, not by just him, by me also. And I just don't believe God intended for the covenant of marriage to be lived out in that way.
And so let me ask you this. If you were to choose to divorce, and whether you do or don't, I don't have a dog in this fight. It's your life. You're a grown-ass woman, and you have every right to live as a grown-ass woman who makes her own autonomous decisions, and the people that truly love you will love you and accept you and support you. And the people who just want you to do what they want to do because they're big fucking egos, they'll reject you. Well, you know what? Thank you. We just culled the herd. We just know who the real fucking mensches are, the real people who love you. And your values are, this is not what marriage is meant to be. I don't believe this is what God wants for me. Do you have the courage to live based on your values? Yes or no?
No.
Then that's fair. That's totally fair. It's scary as shit, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, very.
Very scary.
When all you've known for 25 years is this person and this relationship, it's a terrifying thought to not be in that relationship, particularly when he is going through 5 months of life coaches and reading and counseling and has done a complete 180 and is trying to become the man and the person that I wanted 25 years ago. But at the same time, I feel very manipulated by it. It's very off-putting. It's difficult to embrace. It's not that I'm not appreciative. It's just very difficult.
And I love your word choice there, off-putting, very Southern phrase. What is the most off-putting thing about him making all these changes that I've been saying I wanted for decades? I wanted 20 years ago. Why is it off-putting now? Because why? He's
very cocky and confident and superior because he's fixed himself. He's very, I can fix you too. I know what's wrong with you. I know what you need. This morning he said, I own you.
Ooh.
And that's a quote.
So the wrong thing to say. Wow. Okay.
So it's not that I don't wish him to be confident and find his values and find his center and find who he is and who he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's that if I don't conform to exactly what it is that he wants, it's not okay.
Okay.
I have said this phrase many times over the past couple of weeks. It's the hypocrisy of the situation that frustrates me. It's a hypocrisy for me. For instance, I'm not allowed to talk to anybody of the opposite sex, okay? However, it's okay for him to go to a single woman's house, go inside, have a conversation with her, and then lie and say, I wasn't there very long, or it wasn't a big deal.
Right. No, I got it.
But yet we're supposed to be building trust.
Right. So
and we're supposed to be building.
Got it.
Even this podcast was sprung on me without knowledge last night.
Okay. How bad does the pain of life have to get before you finally say, fuck it, and you start living the way you want to live? Where you stop eating other people's shit. How bad does it have to get for you? Because it sounds like you're just almost ready to just march right back into this marriage because uncle this and family that and Marshall this and that and G and the kids and all that. I mean, you've been a good little soldier for 46 fucking years.
I feel the weight of his pain on my shoulders. If I walk out, I know it'll kill him. I don't know how to not feel the weight of his pain.
Okay.
I would be responsible for.
Right. And the truth is, technically, you're not responsible for it. That is that he's responsible for it at that point. And I get that you feel the guilt, and I get that you feel the heaviness of that. I get it. In a way, it's a great tool to keep you in the relationship, making sure you remember how the guilt you're going to feel if you leave and so on and so forth. But this is just it. Your entire fucking life, especially if you had the mom, your mom was abusive and so forth, and all this shit is just like you've been so wanting the approval of others, and you feel other people's feelings so strongly that it's like you can't move for fear of who I might hurt. Hurt the kids, hurt the husband, hurt the. It's like, oh my fucking God. And, at some point, and let me just ask you, at what point do your feelings actually fucking matter to you?
I tried to step up about 15 years ago. I went and secured an attorney and was ready to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and started trying to fix things and work on things, and so I stayed. And recently, when we started having, it's ironic, we took an anniversary trip, 25th anniversary trip to Panama in August.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when I fell apart recently. That's when this whole thing fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
In the most recent episode of falling apart, if you will.
Sure.
And it was so stupid. And I'm just going to be really honest. It was over the stupidest thing ever. We were sitting on the plane. I'd been up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning packing while he slept. And I fell asleep. I put my earbuds in, connected it to the TV on the plane, and fell asleep. About 30 minutes later, I'm getting nudged across the aisle by my husband, who says, "Give me your earpod, or give me your earbuds." And I said, "Well, why? Did you not get any from the stewardess?" And he goes, "No, I want yours." And I said, "Well, why don't you ask the stewardess for some?" He said, "Well, I did, but she doesn't know where they are. And besides, you have some in your bag. Just get yours out and give me yours." So I proceed to take them off and give them to him. And then I'm up for the rest of the time because my AirPods won't work and connect to the TV. So he's over there plugged in, listening, happy as can be, because he woke me up. And just at that moment, I had this, what am I doing with someone who's so inconsiderate and knows I'm exhausted and tired and just needed a moment, that he would nudge me across the aisle, wake me up to take something from me. And it was such a significant moment. And then we fast forward to other things on that trip, like I calmly brought something up to him that bothered me, and he told me that if I didn't have anything constructive or positive to add, that I needed to shut up.
And so the result then of all these sequences of events is what? In one sentence or less, what was the result?
I had met the end of my rope. I was at the end of my rope.
And as a result of the end of the rope, what was the takeaway? What was the result? What was the action? What was the realization? What was the what? What came of being at the end of your rope?
That either something had to drastically change or I was really done. And I asked for a separation, and I took off my wedding ring and asked for a separation.
Mm-hmm.
And he would not leave the house, and he would not acknowledge that we were separated. He would not give me any space or time to think through or process or any of the things. Instead, he had me followed. He had my phone tapped, my cell phone. So he then proceeded to take those to his attorney to threaten me with.
So what you're saying is then you had reached the end of your rope and you had said what you wanted, and then he proceeded to take more rope, basically, that he continued to do these things, these hurtful things, and so on and so forth. And yet you're considering staying in the relationship because evidently you have more rope to give. You had not, in fact, reached the end of your rope.
That's a fair statement. I don't know why I ever have more rope to give.
You're terrified.
Why?
Because you're terrified. It's always fear. Everything is fear. you're terrified of hurting him, but I think you could probably fucking get over that one, given that he just keeps hurting you. But the notion of the wrath or the disappointment, the sideways glances of people, but especially the uncle and whoever else, seeing your kids hurt, it's just a massive burden. And to say, well, gosh, I did all this. Now, logically, you know that if you got the divorce, you didn't do all this, that this was the destruction of a marriage and so on and so forth. You're just the one that has the balls to shoot the horse with the broken leg. You're the one that has the balls to do the mercy kill.
He says he sincerely believes we can fix it.
Well, of course he does. And the truth is, and whether or not you've seen any of my videos before, but I talk about this is such a pattern where, someone's cheating or someone's an asshole or whatever. And then once one person, but there's always a power imbalance in a relationship. And I guarantee you two have had a power imbalance. He's had more power than you. Accurate or inaccurate?
That's accurate.
Right. So then when you experience so much pain that you finally escalate your power to make it equal, or say step up even above and say, I am separating, he will escalate even further and engage whatever, the way you're describing it at least, engage even further resources or do even more things. Why? To restore the power imbalance of him on top, to fundamentally get his boot right back on your throat. That he will escalate, what you're describing is he escalate and escalate to get you back in your place because, well, as he said, he owns you. Right. And you're so fucking terrified. And that's where people who are manipulative or controlling or abusers love to have their victim. Casey, thoughts?
So you're already alone. The thing that you fear the most has already happened. The thing that you fear the most, you use the word, and it's a beautiful word. I love some of your word choices because I feel them when you say them. You use the word covenant of the marriage. He broke the covenant. He broke the covenant, not one time and not last year or the year before that. You dated the infidelities back, I think, 15 years. Maybe they go back longer than that.
From the beginning.
And I don't want to begrudge him anything because we had a conversation with him and, aside from what you're telling us, he seemed like a very nice man. But he clearly has intimacy issues. He was trained not to trust anybody, and so he's become untrustworthy. And he has a lot of stuff to work out. You don't need to be there with him while he works that out. And most importantly, you don't need to be there for this time because of one very important thing. You are teaching your daughter that it's okay for men to abuse her.
Exactly.
And you are teaching your son that it's okay for him to treat women like this. And so for that reason, and that reason alone, you need to have separation from this man. You need to get a separation at the very least from him, in my opinion, so that you can feel yourself and think yourself and show your children that this is not okay.
Yeah,
because it's not.
And you know what, Casey, that was brilliant. Thank you for commenting.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your bravery. I mean, especially that it was just sprung on you.
Yeah.
And Casey, I love your point that you make that the price on your children, yes, of divorcing is pain, of course. And the truth is, children recover from divorce. 50% of people are getting divorced, roughly. So a lot of kids are recovering from divorce. And this is not something new. And the techniques of the mental health professionals and the clergy and so forth are so much better at recovering from divorce. Okay. But the price is, by staying in this flying shit show, is the price on the kids is much more insidious of what the definitions of love are that you're teaching your children. What the definitions of masculinity are that you're teaching your children, what the definitions of femininity, of motherhood are, what your definitions of marriage are, and what your definitions of all of this are. And it's like, dude, sheepers, is this really what I want to teach my fucking children?
And he should feel that way too.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, Adina, you have been just really brilliantly, to use Casey's words, the bravery, brave. But before we sort of say our goodbyes, Rob, thoughts?
Yeah, I've had a boring life. Only 2 divorces, difficult divorces, 3 kids from 2 different mothers. But all I can say is Adina, I know how hard this is, how very hard this is, and just simply put, my heart hurts for you.
Rob, one question. There was a piece in there where she talks about how could God allow me to suffer like this? How could God allow this pain? You want to weigh in on that one?
Oh, people have such strong feelings about this. I'm just not sure what I could add to that, except that there is free will, and one can make one's own choices. And what feels right is generally what's right.
So God speaks to us from within, and that He calls each one of us to different paths. And there's no shortage of adultery in the Bible. And so forth, and we're each called to different things. And the question really, at least from a theological perspective and a faith perspective for you, Adina, is what do you believe God is calling you to? And so I'm going to just ask you point blank before we close out the show here, what do you believe, regardless of what anybody else believes? Because the truth is, God called each of the disciples to go minister to a different place. God called Stephen to basically die. He was the first Christian martyr. He wasn't called to go minister to the fucking, the Americas or whatever. So everybody's called to something different. What do you believe at this stage in your life God is calling you to the degree that you can hear God's voice? And regardless of whether or not you like the message, what do you believe God is really calling you to?
I've had two different feelings recently. One is that I needed to separate myself enough from the situation to find me, to find what it is that I need and I want.
Fair. And what's the other?
The other is that if by some miracle this marriage is sustainable after many counseling sessions in the future, is it possible that we have been placed in this position to help other people?
Sure, it's possible. But is that a calling? What is the action that you believe God is calling you to? So that's a message you may be getting. Gee, maybe if we can turn this around, we can help other people. Great. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just asking what God is calling you to fucking do with your life.
I'll be really honest right here.
That's what I want to hear.
It's going to be as straightforward as I
love
can
it.
be.
Give it to me.
I don't know.
That's
because
fair.
I have been so wrapped up in 8 children and a cheating husband that I don't have a clue who I am or what I want.
Fair enough. And to which I will say, yet isn't it interesting when I said if all the pressures of your uncle and your husband and so forth telling you what to do, if they weren't there, I asked you what you'd do and you could answer that lickety split. And you said, I'd divorce and find a new life. Anyway, so I got to tell you, Adina, you're a little fucking badass, man. You're tough and strong and smart, and you had the courage to be vulnerable, and I am grateful for that. I know we're going to be having you back for the next show with your husband. So I want to thank you for being on our show. You've been a great guest. Really and truly, thank you so much. And to all you are absolutely welcome. And to all of our listeners around the world, from South Africa to Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, thank you on behalf of Rob and KC. Have a kick-ass night.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by 2-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.